Yeah, A.J. Mahar here. And I just thought I would briefly just talk a little bit about the fact that I had borderline personality disorder. Diagnosed when I was just about to turn 18. And who knew what it was back then? I didn't. Nobody explained it to me. And then I would be on a journey. It would take probably 10 more years at that point for those words to come back. You know, pre-internet, pre-books on the subject. And I only share that here to say, I'm talking to some clients recently who, they decided to work with me because of the fact that I'm somebody who's recovered from BPD. And what does that mean? And why am I going to talk a little bit about that? Well, a lot of people have a lot of understanding about borderline personality disorder, right? A lot of professionals, a lot of pioneers in the field, but they're missing one thing. They can't know how their patients or clients feel. And that's something that I do know from the inside out. And that's something that I really try my best to really only talk about when working with clients to help them. And one of the things that many clients tell me after, working with me or while working with me is that they really just, the fact that I have that insider track understanding from my own lived experience and recovery, that they say, this is not me saying it, but that they tell me, often they've seen many therapists before they work with me, and they say that it's just the insider perspective that I have, that I can explain it more to them than any other therapist has or any book they've read. And this isn't me, being egoic or bragging. But the reason I'm talking about this is because I think I need to share a little bit more about certain aspects of what I know from the inside out to help others. And I guess the one I'll start with here is, why is it that still nobody has accurate statistics, but why is it still that such a high percentage of people with BPD do not seek treatment, won't stick with treatment? Either they never seek it or they won't stick with it, and they will never really grow or grow very much or change emotionally and behaviorally. They can keep getting, they can keep taking in intellectual knowledge and becoming more intelligent over the course of their lifetime. But why is it that so many, okay, let's take the two scenarios, so many that don't go at all, and so many that go, but then quit, or go multiple times and quit. So I think there's a problem. There's a lot of skilled professionals out there, but they don't know what I do, unless they too have recovered from BPD. So that doesn't mean that everything I know means, they're all like no good in it. No. But there's a key thing to this, which is understanding from an experiential place of having been through what it takes to recover from borderline personality disorder, as I do. Understand what that's like because I went through it, I accomplished it, and I recovered 30 years ago or so. It is, and it might be hard for exes to hear this, or loved ones, but it is one of the most formidable processes that I can think of in not what I would call mental health recovery, but in the context of healing and reparation to an arrested emotional self, to a lost self, to the adverse childhood experience that many a partner of a person with BPD has heard, and maybe not to the nines, the horror of, but a lot about. And this doesn't mean that they aren't responsible for how they treat people. But here's what I'm here to say. If you're somebody, the ex of someone with BPD, the husband, the wife, maybe you're about to get ready to, you're getting ready to divorce this person, children are in the mix, and all of the complicated things and that can happen for children and what children need. People think, people want, people are so desperate to, understandably, to help their loved one or even an ex. But I just want to tell her, just want to tell him, I just want to tell him that they have BPD. Because maybe then, even if it's not working out for us, I get that, or some people like maybe still have false hope. But maybe, just maybe they'll go get help then. When the process, let me stop there. When the reason that so many won't even go and seek treatment, I mean, I use these terms a lot, right? But it's the fear, it's the anxiety of the death instinct, which means that when the emotional arrested development happens, that's a psychological death, as Melanie Klein described it. And she was the mother of object relations theory. And so that is the level of adverse experience and horror that people in the 75% with BPD have experienced. And that is almost really indescribable when you come face to face with that reality, the feelings, and moving out about what all that really means. Not having a self, not having known self, maybe having a narcissistic or borderline parent or comorbid BPD, NPD parent, or like I had a BPD, NPD mother and a dark triad father. So many crucial developmental needs. They just don't happen. And yet, what do children do? I mean, there's a couple different responses, but what do children do? They get parentified, or they might be infantilized, but they don't get seen, they don't get heard, they don't get their needs met, they get treated with adverse childhood experience themselves. And so people with BPD are running so hard from this pain that I think I've written a few blog posts that kind of describe it, but I probably should write something to describe it. It would be much better to describe it in writing, probably, than in words. But there's an enmeshment, a parentification, a trying to help out a parent with BPD or NPD or comorbidity both, or like a dark triad or whatever. Parent is just emotionally unavailable. It's about a child's survival needs, why they try to make things right for a parent, to get the parent to not, hit them, to get the parent to not yell and scream at them. Because children, like even 5, 6, 7, they don't understand what's going on with the parent or that they're not responsible. No, children always take on the pain as if it's their fault. So this happens with people with BPD too. So the point I want to get to here is this most formidable process is one in which there's many moving pieces to it, but I'll just talk about this one right now, which is separation individuation, which people with BPD who are untreated have, even people with significant treatment, often haven't yet got through the process of the reparatively going through successfully separation individuation, which is a stage of early childhood that happens, late in the age of 2 and beyond for the next year or two. Well, people with BPD have arrested emotional development before they get through that stage and phase of development. It involves the rapprochement phase. It involves having the object, the parent, the object other. It involves whether one can trust them to be there. It's where kids learn how to sort of like playing peekaboo, and running away from mom, but mom's there and coming. And when that doesn't all unfold the way that it should, children often enmesh as a way of survival, or hide behind the parent with the most power, even if they're the parent that gives the most adverse childhood experience. Keep trying to please that parent. So a crucial point in recovery from BPD is this reparative piece around, first of all, finding self, and then secondly, the remnants of self, the seeds of self, it's usually an infant to toddler self to start out with, and then helping to mature that toddler self now through separation individuation. It's so formidable that I've seen clients who are doing so well in their recovery. That's when they take their lives, is when it's that crucial getting so close to separation individuation, which doesn't mean for everybody with BPD in therapy that they have to go no contact from family or no contact from a parent or parents. But it can mean that for many. It meant that for me. But the other thing is that it's about unenmeshing. It's about, I'm just going to use a way to describe it, stepping back to look at who that object other really is. With all the splitting and all the things that people are going through with BPD, it goes back to a really primal wound wherein that original object, most often mother, was experienced as perhaps somewhat of a caring mother that met needs. And then, so good mother, bad mother is the first split. And it can't be reconciled by an infant or a toddler, and it can't be reconciled by a child. So separation, individuation, not getting through that stage and having arrested emotional development happen first is why splitting, the first split is within the person with BPD, but that's ego fragmentation, not multiple personality disorder. And the second split is needing to have good mother and bad mother because the child needs good mother and can't tolerate bad mother. And mother, if she can be one way and then the other way, survival, and it's not even about trust at that level, but survival, there's a split. And that split carries on in all relationships, unless and until somebody goes to therapy and does this very formidable work. So in separation, individuation, it's a time when patterns of a lifetime of trying to get the needs met, crucial developmental, emotional, survival needs met from the parent that couldn't meet them, and that contributes largely to people having BPD. In therapy, this is a very tenuous time, and this is when most people will quit therapy if they get anywhere near this, because what happens, and what I know, is that I had to go through many, many experiences, almost like flashbacks, but just bodily experiences with terror of the anxiety of the death instinct, and working through the separation individuation. Because what's experienced during that in therapy is one thing, but what comes with that closely behind and kind of overtakes the process often, as I experienced it, is the terror of what you are re-experiencing. And even when you realize you're re-experiencing it, it still doesn't stop how that feels in the body, and the terror that produces and produces and reproduces and reproduces. And it needs to be worked through and worked through and worked through and dealt with and coped with and moved through. And this is where so many people will quit therapy if you get anywhere near this, And or I've had clients who take their life in the middle of that because they can't externalize. So they have an externalized lost self, and it kind of fuses with wounding parent. And so that needs to get undone in the process of recovery. You need to be able to internalize that lost self and externalize that interjected inner critic wounding parent. And man, doesn't it sound like everybody would just want to do that? But it is so incredibly hard and so incredibly painful. So I'd like to do more videos like this if you want me to. Let me know in the comments. This was just a little bit about one aspect of something. But my point here is, just in summary, there are formidable reasons why people with BPD are so protected that they can't consciously see what they're doing to others, how they're affecting others, and they don't even feel worthy of healing. And that healing, going to therapy, that process brings back this anxiety of the death instinct. So it's really a dissociative feeling that can come upon one, as it did me many times years ago in my recovery, where you absolutely feel like you're just going to die. And it's a reliving. And I remember when I got to that point in recovery where I knew it was a reliving, and it was still terrorizing to go through, until I kept working through it, kept re-experiencing it, kept being supported in therapy, kept doing, some coping with deep breathing, but other coping techniques around that, to the point where the body, like I said, the body keeps a score. And I would keep getting, in certain areas of my body, these feelings that would be tantamount to the terror of what caused me to have an arrested emotional self in my infancy, really, before toddlerhood. And there's this, it takes a real commitment to open to that, and it feels impossible to do. I don't even know how I did it to this day, and people do it. But this is where people, if they will even go to treatment and get in therapy, so where people with BPD fall away from the process, either by quitting and resolving never to try again, or trying many times and saying, I'm not doing this ever again, or by taking their lives. It's such a crucial, it's not the only, but it's a very crucial juncture, because it's really about, like I said, welcoming in that lost self, internalizing that again because it's been externalized, and then externalizing out the interjected wounding parent that's been taken in. The inner critic, which is really huger in BPD than in other situations in people's early adverse childhood experience to different degrees. So I say this to you because if you have BPD, I hope it will give you food for thought wherever you might be in this process. But if you are an ex or a loved one and you think that telling them that they have BPD is going to make a difference, or that you think that that's going to be the impetus for them to go through what they'd really have to go through, and I don't mean to scare anybody with BPD, it can be done. I just wanted to give you a little picture to see if you'd like to hear any more about this or not, as to why the person with BPD ends up helpless in the face of their own agony that they don't understand in a conscious way. And people who love them, or exes who have still hope, or you want to try to keep a family together, etc., you want them to get help. But I want you to hear from me right now. I hope it matters to you to know this. Getting help, it's way more than getting help that's required for people to get into and stick with treatment from BPD. And that's if they're like I was atypical. That's if, like me, I didn't have any addictions. I did not take drugs. I didn't smoke. I didn't use alcohol. And right now this is a medical problem. But I used food years ago. I don't do that anymore. But the thing is, so if they have all these other things going on and they're on psychiatric medication today, etc., all of that's going to block awareness. All of that's going to block this process. And that's the tragedy and the reality of the pseudoscience of the pathologizing of psychiatry. Because these are people who have been really tremendously wounded in childhood. They didn't ask for it. They didn't deserve it. And it is an incredible wounding. And that's why they act the way they do. And that's why they treat people. And they're responsible for that. And they're responsible in adulthood to do something about it. But how unjust is that? And they get stuck in the right biting of how unfair that is. So I just want to give you an idea of the formidable nature of this work that people with BPD need to do in recovery if they're going to actually pursue it and stick with it. And it's deeper than DBT skills therapy. That is not a recovery modality. It helps many people to lead better lives and manage symptoms much better and gain a lot of awareness, but it does not do this deeper, does not help people do this deeper work I'm talking about. And it's the very nature of the depth of that work and a lack of coping skills, and more importantly, the core wound of abandonment and the incredible shame that people with BPD are drowning in because their needs weren't met and or adverse childhood experience on top of it. They don't feel worthy and they don't feel capable of doing it. So I just want to give you a little look into what it's like on that side, just briefly, and then say to you, to help you, not to judge you, but to say, how can you think that without understanding what people really are facing, if they go to recovery, if they make a commitment through that journey, how long that takes? Don't reach back to tell them they have BPD. Don't keep thinking you could have done this better, said that righter, not said this, not done that. As much as you're the one in pain now, if you're the ex or you're about to divorce somebody with BPD or wherever you are with this, like that is very immediate, or maybe it's been a couple of years, what you really need to understand about this is it wasn't even about you. You're the one that stood there. You're the one that got raged at, or you're the one that got to silent treatment, and you're the one that got hit. You're the one that got tortured, and you're the one that got hurt because of their hurt, because they were really fighting back against a wounding parent. Dissociation, past in the here and now. So please hear me when I say, you can't rescue them. You can't make them go to therapy. You can't tell them they have BPD and expect it to matter. Only they can choose to take this very difficult, formidable, but oh so rewarding journey. Only they can choose it. And only they can stick with it if they fight their way through as I did and others have. So I just want people to know you're not who they say you are. You didn't do what they accuse you of. That's what the wounding parent did to them. So take yourself off the hook today. Take yourself off the bad woman, bad person, bad guy hook that they will so put you on, because they are, when they do that, it's you that's taking the pain. You know, it's you that's getting yelled at, screamed at, blamed, projected onto. But they're really yelling and screaming and fighting with the wounding parent. That's how you represent that object other representation of wounding parent. It wasn't really all about you. And if you haven't seen my video about idealization and what that really means, like they don't really see you more in idealization than they do in devaluation. And what does that mean for you? Gotta let yourself off the hook today. Gotta let go. Gotta face your formidable pain, because I'm not going to measure pain here. Set yourself free from one thing today if you haven't already. It was not your fault. There's nothing you could have done to rescue them. Don't tell them they have BPD if you haven't already done that. It doesn't help. Take care of yourself. Stay no contact. Stay on your path. Or if you're still with the person and you're getting divorced, or wherever the situation is, surrender to the helplessness that you feel, because you really are helpless to change anything about somebody who's untreated with BPD and not wanting any help and blaming the whole world for what happened to them when they were children and not understanding that that's what they're doing. That's not your fault. That's not your responsibility. And it may still be gut-wrenching, but I hope that you can hear this message as I intended it. And please let me know what you think in the comments, because I don't know whether or not to go more deeply into snippets of the different facets of how I recovered and what it meant and what it entails. But I think right now I just wanted to share a little bit about separation individuation and the anxiety of death instinct and what it's like when you're going through that recovery. And how, I didn't want to run and I didn't run, but it was exhausting and I was convinced it would be the end of me. And I don't know, but for the grace of God, how I endured that, how I was able to keep going back and going through it again and again and again. Each time, though, understanding more, gaining more awareness, grieving more. A lot of people with BPD have complicated grief and it's stuck and it's frozen. And maybe for them, they just live in a very cold climate, if you know what I mean. They just can't get to the thaw that is the opening that makes it all possible. So I hope that was helpful, but let me know what you think if you want to hear more about the fact, I had BPD and recovered from it. Not something I need to talk about, but something that does help me when I work with people with BPD, and it helps a lot of those who are exes that I work with as well, that I can really speak from the inside out. I didn't just read textbooks. I didn't just study things. I lived through them. And so to what degree can I talk about more of that would be help to people? Well, I need some feedback on that because I don't know. Anyway, gone long again. But I hope this gives you food for thought. I hope that loved ones, exes really hear this, because, never mind that you just can't drag a horse to water and make them drink. That doesn't really touch at all what's going on, in the depths of the agony of people with BPD, but that they don't even know where it's coming from, and that it gets mixed up with you in the here and now, and you bear the brunt of it. They don't do that on purpose. They're not narcissists. And you can't save them, and you can't fix them, and you can't rescue them. So try to radically accept that helplessness right now and feel how that feels. Grieve it. But don't keep hanging on to it and hurting because you're the bad person or the bad guy, and you don't know how to live with that, because that's not who you are. Of course it's not who you are. Because when they said all those things to you and left you with that impression that that's who you are, and you've been living that for a while now, it never was who you are. It's who their wounding parent was. Take care.